James was in his early 30s, tall, handsome, with strong classic features and thick black hair. After 3 years in the business, his private detective agency had a good reputation in the city. He was single and in love. The only drawback here was that he was in love with a married woman. One usual day in office, James was sitting in his cabin, sipping on coffee and reading the newspaper. Somebody knocked at the door. "Come in," he said, keeping his cup of coffee on the table. A slender, middle-aged man with thin hair and rimless glasses, dressed in an expensive suit, opened the door and walked in. James got up from behind his desk and shook the newcomer's hand. "Please, sit down. I'm James, director of the agency. What can I do for you?" he said with a half-anxious expression, which he had practiced in the mirror many times. "My name is Henry Roberts," he spoke in a low voice. "You have been highly recommended to me. I have a very sensitive matter to discuss, and I've heard your agency is very discreet." James acknowledged the words with a modest wave of his hand and asked him what did he need help with. Henry explained, "I suspect my wife is cheating on me, but I want to be sure. I want you to investigate. Follow her when she leaves our apartment and let me know where she goes and who she sees." James said, "We can give you a complete and detailed report. When would you like it?" "I guess 2 weeks will be good enough, unless you think you should follow her longer," said Henry. James agreed, saying 2 weeks may be okay. Henry handed over his card to James, which had his address. Along with that, he also gave an envelope with his wife's picture and a check for the advance payment. Henry already knew the rates of James's agency. "What is your wife's name?" asked James. "Sharon Roberts." James held his breath. Sharon Roberts was his lover's name. This man must be her husband, he thought to himself. He opened the envelope and looked at the picture and the check, hoping to gain time and recover his cool. Henry supposed his seriousness was a desire to start work on the job at once. "I see you're a man of few words. I'm sure you'll give me a thorough report next time I see you. Good day." James finally found his voice. "Good day, Mr. Henry," he said, getting up from his chair and walking his new client to the door. After Henry was gone, James sat down again at his desk. He was in a state of shock. He opened the lower right-hand drawer and took out a bottle of scotch and a glass. He poured himself a drink, and while sipping it, pondered how to handle this tricky situation. So his new client was Sharon's husband. Not much to look at, he thought. No wonder she wants to get a divorce and marry me. He knew he couldn't give this client a true report. Still, he had to make a report. He decided to give his operative, David, the job and to stay away from Sharon during the 2 weeks of the investigation. He would tell her about her husband's suspicions later, after he had delivered the report, and they would have a good laugh then. David was a young man who had recently started to work. 2 weeks later, David, eager and in love with his job, came into James's office. "I finished the Henry Roberts investigation. I'll have the report on your desk first thing tomorrow morning." "Great. Do me a favor now, will you? Call Mr. Henry and ask him to come to the office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. "You got it. See you tomorrow," said David. But the next morning, when Henry walked into the office, David hadn't finished the report yet. "Good morning, Mr. Henry. Sit down. Would you like a cup of coffee?" said James, trying to gain some time until his operative brought in the report. "That would be nice, thanks." James poured scalding hot coffee into 2 cups, placing the sugar and cream within Henry's reach. When they had started drinking the coffee, David walked into the office and, after greeting Henry, gave a folder to his boss. Quickly, James took out the original copy and gave it to his client, keeping the duplicate copy face down in front of him. Henry read the report without a change of expression. When he finished, he looked at James directly and said, 3. "Beg your pardon?" James asked surprisingly. I was afraid of something like this. 3 of them in only 2 weeks. What are you talking about? Your report. It's really complete. It shows that she had 3 lovers in 2 weeks. James choked on his coffee, spilling some on the duplicate copy of the report in front of him. He exclaimed, "What? Oh, pardon me," and using the excuse of wiping the coffee from each page of the report, started reading it. When he had finished, he was stunned and felt weak. With an effort, he raised his eyes to the face of his client. Henry had a grin on his face. With a knowing look and subtly mocking tone, he said, "Don't you believe that there are some women you just can't trust?" Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos.